Hi, welcome to Psychology Today. I'm Ann Morrow, your host. This is a show about bicycling in general and specifically about bicycle safety. Thank you for joining us. And thank you to our crew in the control booth, without whose help we wouldn't have a TV show. We have an interesting show coming up. Our first guest is Beaverton Police Officer Kevin McDonald. And I always enjoy talking to a law enforcement professional about their perspective about bicycle safety and what they see going on in the streets, both good and bad, and they can help us appreciate maybe what we might be doing as cyclists to be safer. And after a quick break, we'll have Will Heibery from the lumber yard, and you'll find out what the lumber yard is. He's going to tell us about an entirely different kind of riding than we've ever featured here on the show before, and it might be something that you're interested in or someone you know. So we'll look forward to hearing about that. I hope you've all been outside riding in these slightly drier and warmer days of spring, and maybe set some goals for your own riding, and that might include our own Northwest Bicycle Safety Council's Beaverton Banks and Beyond Bicycle Tour on August 24th. I hope that is part of your riding plans for the 2013 riding season, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. You can easily go to our website, Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, and get signed up for that ride, and be sure and order your jersey. If you want a jersey, you're going to have to pre-order it, so don't wait, and get signed up for that ride and set it out there as a goal. So let's meet our first guest. We have Kevin McDonald from the Beaverton Police Department. Kevin's been a guest on our show before, but it's been quite a while, and so we always like to hear what's going on as far as a police officer's perspective. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself, how you came to be in Portland and that sort of thing?
Sure. I grew up in this area, and I've worked for the Beaverton Police Department since 1988. Started out my law enforcement career at the age of 16, and I was a cadet for a number of years and rode mountain bikes as a cadet for the department. In 1993, I was hired as a reserve officer, and in 1994, I started my career as a police officer with the city of Beaverton. I was assigned to our patrol division for a number of years, and for about 3 years, I served on our mountain bike team, so I was actively riding a mountain bike doing police work, and then the last 8 or so years I've been assigned to our traffic division. I'm also assigned to our crash reconstruction team here in Washington County, so I kind of get a mixture of stuff that happens here in Beaverton but also in Washington County.
It sounds like you were really on a direct path to where you wanted to be, huh?
I've always had an interest in traffic safety, and it's been a theme throughout my career. Traffic safety issues are important to me, and I have a vested interest in making our roads safer, and that's the path that I've gone with my law enforcement career.
Well, glad to have you on our side, because everything you do impacts cyclists as well, I think. So you are a cyclist yourself.
I am. I would say I haven't ridden as much in the last few years, or my riding style has changed. In my younger days, I enjoyed a lot of the off-road mountain bike riding, and as I've gotten a little bit older and had a family, I've tailored my rides more towards kid-friendly rides, and I do occasionally commute to work, and so I see things from the perspective as a commuter on our roads, but also I still have an association with our bike team, so I will do this job as a traffic officer on a mountain bike occasionally too, so I can see things from different perspectives.
Interesting. Now let me ask you a question that isn't something we talked about, but Bruce Buffington, who is our producer, always talks about that you guys learn how to fall off of your bikes. Is that right?
We do. Not my favorite drill to practice. We do annual certifications for riding, and we will practice the drill of falling down, usually on a grassy area. And the point of doing that is to eliminate the tendency for you to want to put your arm out so you're eliminating the potential for breaking a wrist, and it allows you to roll with the bike. It's going to hurt probably. Doing it on the grass is definitely a lot easier. I would say as a police officer, with all the gear we have, if you fall off the bike, it is going to hurt because you're just going to land on your equipment.
You're going to get poked and
yes,
contused.
It will be very uncomfortable.
All right, all right. I knew Bruce was telling me the truth, but I just wanted to hear it from somebody else. So what you talked about your interest in bicycle safety. How does that tie in with your career and your traffic safety?
Well, I see the worst types of crashes, and so that's the serious part of it. But also, as a rider, I want to make things safer. And it is kind of a twofold educational thing. It's educating riders, but it's also educating motorists too. There's a little bit of give and take between both. And so my interest is trying to eliminate the types of crashes that I go to, and if I can't eliminate it, at least reduce it, and hopefully mitigate some of the injuries that people get in these crashes, whether it's the rider not wearing a helmet or maybe thinking about being more visible when they're riding in traffic in low light conditions.
Which we have quite a bit of around
yes, we
here,
do.
that gray light. Okay. Well, you know, I was thinking this morning about the show, and I recalled that I've been pulled over by the Portland police while on my bicycle. But I have to say, in my defense, I was not the driver. I was on the back of a tandem.
Okay.
And I won't name names of who was
All
driving, but I'm married to him. So it was a situation where we kind of didn't really slow down too much for the stop sign and went around a corner, and we got pulled over, and it just had a nice reminder that that's not the way you should do things.
Our state law requires that you stop at the stop signs, and you have to come to a complete stop, and that a bicycle is considered a vehicle under Oregon law, and you have to stop at the stop sign. And if you don't, you could be cited, or worse, get into a crash. In my career, I've seen most of the crashes that I have seen have been intersection-related crashes, and they aren't necessarily riders disobeying the traffic control device. The majority of the crashes that I've been to in my career have been turning right-hand turn, right hook type crashes.
Oh, sure.
Those types of crashes. I can think of one recently that I had been to where the cyclist was in the bicycle lane going through an intersection, and the oncoming car had a yellow flashing arrow, made the turn in front of the cyclist, and she ended up impacting the side of the vehicle. Fairly serious crash. From an investigative standpoint, I thought it may be a fatal crash. She had a helmet on, but had some pretty serious facial injury. The helmet, without a doubt, made a difference in this young lady's life, in at least keeping her alive. She was able to recover from the crash. I ended up talking to her several weeks later. But I guess the key point that I want to get across is that we have a lot more of these yellow flashing lights at intersections, and even though you may have right-of-way as a cyclist, be aware of the cars that are oncoming to you, and watch what that driver is going to do so you can anticipate, hopefully, and avoid a crash.
Good advice. So do you see improvement between cyclists and drivers sharing the road and obeying the laws?
I do. I don't think, I think with the amount of riders that are out there, I think the amount of crashes are fairly low. In my experience, I've seen a lot more riders taking responsibility for their own personal safety, meaning they're using the lights more, they are using clothing that's high visibility, they're wearing helmets, they're doing things to protect themselves. And so I'm seeing that's what I'm seeing out on on the street. There are, a segment of riders who are maybe not daily riders. They're just using the bike for quick transportation, and it seems to me those are the ones that I probably tend to run into more in a crash scenario. Not to say that commuters don't get into crashes, because I can think of several that I've been to where the folks are regular commuter riders, and I can think of one very serious one where the gentleman commuted every day, and it was again a right-hand hook type crash. Those crashes are really difficult to I guess, avoid, or I don't know what the right word is, but the rider doesn't always know what the driver is going to do, and I can think of the scenario of a driver sitting at an intersection for their green light. They come up to the red light. They wait there for 30 seconds, kind of start daydreaming or thinking about their day, and they never saw a rider come up until just before the light goes to green, and the rider doesn't see the driver signal, or the driver doesn't signal, and then you get that crash scenario. So there's shared responsibility, I guess, when it comes to those areas. But as a rider, the intersections are definitely the most dangerous place that I've seen with crashes that I've been to. Those are the areas where your potential to get hurt is definitely there.
So a level of awareness and eye contact, and just kind of surveying the whole area, not just a limited view.
Yes, the eye contact is important if you can get it. I think part of my background includes doing auto pedestrian type crashes, and I can think of we have a pedestrian crosswalk diversion class that we put on, and in that class we show some photographs of vehicles in motion. It's actually video now I think about it. Vehicles in motion, and you can't always see the driver through outside glare, and vice versa from the car, you can't always see the pedestrian. So if you can get the eye contact, great, but don't make assumptions, I guess, that the driver saw you.
Okay. So very defensive riding.
I would say so. That's I think it's much safer to be the defensive rider.
Let's talk a little bit about helmets, and you had mentioned that helmets playing a role in an accident situation. What's the law regarding helmets in your jurisdiction?
The state law says that if you're under 16, you are required to have a helmet. I know recently, I think in the media, I saw some push for maybe that to get raised to the age of 18, if I'm not mistaken, but there's nothing in place. So under 16, the helmet is required. You know, as an everyday rider, I would say definitely invest in a helmet, and a good one. I can think of my own crashes that I've been involved in as a cyclist, and I can think in my younger days, had just purchased a helmet, and within an hour or two I had actually crashed and made use of the helmet, but it definitely helped keep me safe. But most of the crashes that I've been to, again, the helmet played a factor in that person's overall ability to survive the crash and have a lesser injury. A lot of these crashes where the rider is knocked off the bike or falls over are very similar to auto pedestrian crashes, where the initial impact of the vehicle into the bike or pedestrian doesn't always cause the most serious injury. It's the fall that the pedestrian or cyclist has after the initial impact, and it's that head injury that days later may end up taking the person's life.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick break and view a video about our Northwest Bicycle Safety Council's Beaverton Banks and Beyond, and that's our sponsor, and the Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, and we want you to come ride with us this summer. So take a look at that video and maybe you'll be inspired. You can see how beautiful that ride is, and it's a lot of fun. We'd really like you to join us on August 24th. Go to our website and get signed up. And this is the way that Northwest Bicycle Safety Council raises money. It's one way that we raise money to participate in all the bike fairs and rodeos that we're doing in the spring, going on very soon. And we partner with the Beaverton Police to do these bike fairs and help children in the area know how to ride their bikes safely, know what the rules of the road are, have a safe bicycle, and have helmets on their heads. So it's kind of a win-win situation. You get a great ride, we get some money to help us do what we like to do with the children in the community. So we're back with Officer Kevin McDonald from the Beaverton Police Department, and we're talking very specifically about safety issues in bicycling. And we were talking about helmets, and Officer McDonald told us that in this area, if you're under the age of 16, you need to have a helmet on your head when you're riding a bicycle. So do you find that most children are wearing helmets then, most kids under the age of 16?
I would say our culture has really shifted in that regard. It's very common to see kids wearing helmets. I think of my own situation with my own family, and I know if I get near the bike that the kids are saying, "Hey, helmet," which I always do, but I'm reminded by my own children. But when I'm out in the community and looking at folks who are riding bicycles, the majority of the folks out there are wearing helmets. And that's, I think, a huge shift in the biking culture that I've seen, that it's expected that you do wear a helmet. So it's not as much of an issue as it has been previously. But I also think there's a lot more awareness and maybe acceptance of people just wearing helmets. Kids, I think from the kid perspective at least, that it's normal to wear a helmet. So if you have a helmet on, no one looks twice. So it's more accepted, I think, with the younger generation now.
It seems to be, yeah. I think when my kids were little and when I was starting to ride, yeah, you were a real dork if you were wearing a helmet.
The same thing is that I compare it to like seatbelt usage.
Yeah.
And you know, many years ago, not everyone wore their seatbelt, and there's been this huge shift where the majority of the people in vehicles now are wearing their seatbelts, or children are in car seats. That's another good example. So along the same lines, helmet usage is definitely improved over the last several years, at least from what I see.
Now, if you do find a child not wearing a helmet, how do you handle that situation?
I usually have a conversation with them. We have the ability to get helmets too. So if I figure out there's a financial issue, I'll do what I can to get that child a helmet so they can ride safe and enjoy their bike. But it usually just takes a short encounter and an educational conversation with them. And my perspective is a bit different than the average street officer. I go to a lot of the serious crashes, and I can kind of relate those experiences in a very sensitive way, I guess. That I've seen some bad stuff, and this is why you should wear a helmet. And I think I can usually get the message across.
That sounds good. That's probably effective. I think I told this story before several months ago. I live up in Vancouver, and my granddaughter and I got pulled over by the Clark County sheriffs, and I was kind of panic-stricken. But he was rewarding us because we were both wearing our helmets when we were riding our bikes, and he gave us a little coupon for a Slurpee or something
Very
at
nice.
7-Eleven.
Very nice.
And my granddaughter Annika still remembers that, and that was really great positive reinforcement to be doing the right thing.
That it just makes me think of some of the experiences I have of riding around, or driving around, I should say, and seeing other riders taking responsibility for their safety. One of the things that I think is super important is the light usage on the bicycle. And I'm not talking about just in the evening hours or hours of darkness, but with as many gray type days that we get here in Oregon, having that bright light just is one added layer of safety for you as a rider, especially for the commuters who are riding day in, day out. just having that little bit of light, and even on some of the bright sunny days we get, that makes you stand out in traffic. And those little extra steps that people take to ensure their safety, I think definitely pays off. And the investment, a lot of the LED lights that are out there in the market, either for the rear and the red lights or the headlights, they are very inexpensive. And redundancy. If you do commute regularly, I would have more than one light source for that time when it doesn't work, because that'll happen eventually.
Yeah, you're right. And
I've
if
had
it's
that happen many times.
behind you, you don't even know it. So,
Exactly.
So you're right. Well, as I mentioned, Beaverton Police do partner with Northwest Bicycle Safety Council in these bicycle fairs and rodeos that we do around the community at the schools and so forth. What benefits do you and the police department see coming out of these bike fairs?
It's a great event. I've been involved with several of them, and it not only helps the kids learn about bicycle safety, but the parents get involved with their kids. They get involved with learning about the safety aspect, and a lot of the things that they get to do on the course that we have are getting kids familiar with certain symbols, signs that they will see when they're adult drivers. So we're preparing these kids to eventually drive a car as well. They're being able to recognize what stop signs are and yield signs. So there's some other benefits other than just bicycling, but these rodeos get the kids in a good, fun atmosphere to learn about bicycle safety. And it's nice from our perspective because we can interact with kids on a level that they're at, and I think it's just a great benefit.
Yeah, I've seen that happening and that interaction, as you said, and learning about the bike itself and making sure that it's safe, because a lot of parents are unaware of how things work and little repairs.
That just reminds me of the mechanical issues that. And I'm not a bike mechanic, and fortunately we do have bike mechanics there, but it's an opportunity to learn about the bicycle and know what needs to be maintained, and you know, if they're paying attention enough, maybe they're actually learning how to do it when they watch the mechanic look at their bike.
Yeah, good point.
So it definitely has benefits in a few different aspects.
Now, what is the most well, I wanted to ask you, if time and money were no object, this is a favorite question of mine, what magic wand would you wave to make bicycle safety better in our community?
Bicycle helmets for everyone, and boy, that's such a complex question because it involves cars. That comes to mind right away, and if you can I guess eliminate some of the conflicts that they have in certain areas and create bicycle routes that are avoiding major traffic areas, that's always a good thing. I know I think of my riding and routes that I ride, and I always choose routes that are away from heavy traffic areas if I can. It's not always avoidable.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to ride in heavy areas. So if money were no object, I would probably invest in maybe some bike trails to avoid busy areas and that type of thing.
I think a lot of people would feel that way. We just don't have the ability. We just, you know, we just don't have that kind of money to rip everything up and rebuild.
Yeah, and you know, I was kind of thinking about just riding in general and knowing your routes, knowing if you commute, you should know what routes can I take to avoid lots of traffic and do it so you can enjoy your ride. 'Cause, you know, that's part of riding, and not worry about the traffic issues. And granted, you can't always do that. Sometimes you have to go through some of these major intersections or ride on some of these busy roads. But if you can find a route that avoids some of those areas, it makes it more enjoyable for you as a rider.
And that has gotten easier and easier over the years.
Most definitely, yes.
What is the most common infraction you see cyclists committing?
I would say the traffic control device issue, the stop sign issue, I was just thinking of a young lady that I stopped a few weeks ago for running several stop signs. I finally caught up to her. We had a conversation, and I think the stop sign issue is a big deal. The traffic lights, not as much. I think there's a more immediate consequence of running a red light. But with the stop signs, the issue with that is, and as a cyclist, you're able to hear more and see more, I think, than a person in a vehicle. So that plays into the awareness issue of coming up to an intersection, knowing that there's cars there or there aren't. But I think of the scenario where there's a car coming up that doesn't stop and they're supposed to, and the cyclist isn't going to win in that. It's just a bad situation. So the thought is that not everyone stops for stop signs even when they should, cars, cyclists included, and you can't gamble on the fact that that other person is going to stop, because the consequence certainly can be bad.
Well, that's certainly a motivating thought. So rider awareness, we talked a little bit about awareness, and you had an anecdote about a cell phone user. And
yeah, cell phones have been quite a bit in the media lately, and it's kind of been in the forefront of some of the enforcement that we've been doing. And it's the overall rider awareness that's important, but in this case, clearly the crash that I'm going to talk about wasn't the rider's fault by any means, but it was a person who was on a cell phone attempting to make a phone call. The driver had made a left turn through an intersection. It was a T intersection, and the cyclist was up ahead. Well, as the driver was looking down, she was making the phone call. She had drifted into the bicycle lane and essentially struck the cyclist from behind. The rider, he had no idea that she was coming up behind him, knocked him off his bike. Fortunately, he wasn't injured seriously at all, but it certainly could have been a much worse crash had she been going any faster. But it's that overall situational awareness of your surroundings. If you use mirrors, I'd recommend it, especially if you're riding all the time. And someone coming up behind you like that, you're probably not going to see it. But I think of riding in rural settings where cars are moving a lot faster, and that awareness of what's coming up behind you becomes real important, because you know, a crash at a 55-mile-an-hour crash is certainly going to be worse.
Yeah. Okay. Good lesson. Now, what about bike lanes? There's a bike lane law, and it's my understanding that as a cyclist, if there's a bike lane, you need to be in it unless it's hazardous to be in it. So, is that enforced?
You described it exactly. Yes, you are required to use the bike lane unless there is a hazard, and then if there is no bike, or if there's not a bike lane on the road that you're on, you're required to stay to the right shoulder and as much as possible. And you know, as far as enforcement goes, I think from a real-world perspective, if I see someone in and out where they're causing a danger to themselves or people hitting them, yeah, we'll stop and talk. You know, if there's a bicycle lane and someone's just riding in the middle of the road, yeah, we'll probably stop and talk to you because you are required to use that first. And most riders, I usually don't see too many lane issues with most riders. I think part of riding in the road, there's some key things that we always say in some of our training, and that's be seen, visibility, be paranoid, which means look around, know your surroundings, and be predictable. And I think that being predictable helps communicate to other people around you what you're doing, and it sends a message. So if you need to take the lane, you know, you signal, I'm taking the lane, and be assertive yet cautious at the same time, because the consequence of the motorist not paying attention could be pretty severe. But being assertive in traffic and really just kind of watching your overall picture of, you know, what's around you.
All right. Now, another scenario that comes up, I ride with a club a lot, so there's a group of cyclists often, kind of a little pack of us, and so when we come up to a stop sign, suddenly we become a mass, and so we kind of all go through the stop sign together, or maybe we're kind of spread out, and the first one makes it through the stop sign, and everybody just kind of follows along, and there's maybe cars at the other, like the four-way stop. And what do you feel about that? What's your take on that?
Technically breaking the law, yes. There's no distinction for group riding in the state law with regard to traffic control devices such as stop signs. Each bicycle is considered a vehicle, so therefore each rider would have to stop individually. I can see the logic behind the group. I make the analogy of it like a semi-truck or a larger type vehicle where it's all going.
Yeah.
But there's no provision in the state law that allows that currently. So unless the legislature changes that at some point, right now each bicycle is considered a vehicle and therefore would have to stop as far as the law says.
Okay. All right. I'll try to spread the word. We also discussed prior to the show, some bikes don't have brakes, maybe fixed gear bikes?
That is, yes. And that's something that I've seen more frequently in this area is the fixed gear bicycles and their ability to come to a complete stop or stop. A few cyclists that I've stopped didn't have any brakes on the bike, and the state law does require that the bicycle have at least one brake. And I think the verbiage in the law says that the brake has to stop the bicycle at 10 miles per hour within 15 feet. If you want to get real specific, that's what the law says.
Okay.
But a brake is required on the bicycle. So just the fixed gear bike, slowing down that way, it doesn't suffice as far as a brake goes.
So how do they stop their bikes?
They basically slowly gear down. I've never ridden a bike like that, but from watching other cyclists, that's how I see it working. And I can think of this one stop sign scenario where this gentleman had gone through, and it was a downhill, but had gone through pretty fast through this intersection. And there's just no way he could stop.
Yeah.
And if there was a hazard, which he needed to do an emergency stop because something came out immediately in front of him, there's just no way he would end up hitting it. And, so that scenario was, I guess, an extreme example of why it's important to have at least one brake on the bike.
Okay, I was kind of unaware of that. I hadn't really given that any thought, so thank you. I think we're kind of wrapping up now. I want to thank you for coming.
Well, thank you.
Really appreciate you've really gone over some of the laws that we kind of question or maybe don't quite understand or maybe don't want to know too well so that we feel like we have to adhere to them. But thank you for educating us, and thank you for being out there looking out for us. And I hope if you find me doing something wrong, you'll give me a little talk. Our producer, Bruce Buffington, from Northwest Bicycle Safety Council always says that if you're going to obey the law, you need to know the law. And so that's one reason that we had Officer McDonald here to tell us about the laws and what we need to be doing. So we're going to go to a quick video now, and with our Bruce Buffington in it himself. And we'll have a quick break, and then we're going to come back and have our other guest, Will Heibery from the lumber yard. So we'll be right back.
Hi, my name is Bruce Buffington, President of Northwest Bicycle Safety Council, an all-volunteer organization dedicated to helping all users of the road safely share the roads. I'm here to remind you to obey all laws, drive with care, look out for one another, and please, please share the road.
And don't forget the rules of the road. Ride single file in the same direction as traffic. Obey traffic signs and signals. Signal your turns and look behind you before you turn. And always stay alert. Remember, guys, wearing your bike helmet is the single most important thing you can do for your safety. Let's say this is If you crash or fall off your bike, ouch. I don't care how tough you think you are. You could really get messed up. Now here's you in a helmet. Cool. You're A-okay and looking smart. So just think of your helmet as part of your gear. You don't see a soccer player without shin guards.
You don't see a basketball player without shoes.
You don't ride your bike without your helmet. It's part of the gear.
Ride safe, ride smart. It's time to start today.
For additional information, you can find us at www.nwbicyclesafetycouncil.org.
Well, that was a great video that really tied in with what Officer McDonald had to tell us about wearing helmets and riding your bike safely. That was really cute, and it was nice to see Bruce Buffington involved there. So we've got Will Heibery here from the lumberyard now, and I think when we talk about the kind of cycling that he's involved in, it'll remind us that we need to wear our helmets because his is a little wilder and crazier. So welcome, Will. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Ann.
We met recently at the Pedal Nations Bike Show.
Yes.
And I thought that our viewers might be interested in what you've got going on at the lumberyard. And so why don't you start by telling us a little bit about yourself and your family and so forth.
Sure, sure. I moved out here with my wife about 11 years ago. Came from the East Coast. Came out here for quality of life, place to raise a family, and now we have I've got an 8-year-old daughter, Claire, and a 4-year-old son, Wyatt, and all of us are big bike riders. And biking has been a big part of my life since I was a kid. And came out to Portland and was a commuter and took the kids to school and rode downtown every day and really loved it. And really felt there was a big piece missing where I grew up and I could just take my bike recreationally. We'd go out the back, we'd build jumps out of pallets. We'd go out in the woods and build jumps. And that wasn't really, in a denser urban environment, not really an option for my kids. And I really wanted to be able to give to them the gift that I had, that freedom, the ability to just get on the bike, work off some energy, and be able to maybe one day use that as a lifestyle choice.
Well, that's really interesting, yeah, because kids like to do that. I mean, and that's one reason I wanted to have you on the show is because I'm a road bike rider, and I'm not going to be, doing ramps and stuff like that yet. I mean, maybe you'll convince me that I need to give it a try. But so yeah, other people have different interests and they want a little more pizzazz, a little adrenaline rush, maybe really develop their skills on a bicycle, and so that's kind of where you come in. Now you talk about riding, commuting and that sort of thing. Well, what's the most recent bicycle ride you did?
Well, for work I pretty much ride my bike every day.
Do you?
So in the park before I came out to the show, I was out playing around a little bit with the kids who were there. So yeah, very recently.
Wow. So were you just having fun with them or instructing them or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both. It's part of my job to get out there, talk to everybody, make sure they're having a good, it's an experience that I want to make sure that halfway through this experience they're already trying to plan the next time they're coming to visit. And so going out there and making sure they have the tools to make sure they're getting the most out of it is an important piece.
Okay, let's talk about the lumberyard, because we're just kind of referring to it.
Yeah.
We don't really know what it is yet. Why don't you describe, and we've got some photographs of the lumberyard. Tell us a little bit about it. Where is it? What is it?
Sure, it's in Northeast Portland. It's on 82nd Avenue. It's just south of Sandy. And it's an old bowling alley, and we gutted the whole place out. And then we've got logs to cross over and trails to ride on. We've got rollers, and we've got ramps, and we've got jumps, and with all this in an environment that we've built to be very progressive in terms of you can come in ground zero, very little skill, and then we make baby steps for you. And so you can take your level of riding to whatever level you want to. And we want to make sure it's in a safe, controlled environment and make sure you have a lot of fun.
Okay, and in this kind of weather, with I don't know, we have so much rain and cold, it's nice to be able to ride your bike and go in and be dry and not even care what's going on outdoors.
Absolutely, and even when the weather's nice, this style of riding is not something that's very it's not accessible.
Uh-huh.
If I'm a big mountain bike rider and I want to ride my mountain bike, I'm going to be driving an hour and 30 minutes to get to the closest trail. But if I can go to my local gym and go to the lumberyard and I can go and I can ride some things that are really help me with my skills, help me push myself, I can get that fix, if you will, and have a good time and be home in time for dinner.
Oh, okay. And that's certainly a factor sometimes with our bicycling is,
Yes.
is the time element, especially for those of us who are trying to seize the weekend.
Right.
So where did this concept come from?
I hijacked it. I absolutely stole it. There's a gentleman that started this in Cleveland, Ohio. His name is Ray Petrol, and he started, I took an old, it was an old parachute factory from World War II, and he did the same thing. He converted it and took 100,000 square feet, and I walked in there and was just blown away. It's just, there's features and jumps and ramps and logs, and I was completely intimidated. And by the end of the weekend, I was absolutely blown away, and I knew when we were flying back, and this was 8 years ago, that I was going to replicate that because I knew Portland needed this.
Yeah, the bike city. It seems like we do need something like that. So what you say you experienced it yourself in Cleveland, and what was the epiphany really? What was that sense that, okay, I got to go do this?
I think for me the epiphany was I walked in there and I saw little kids on bikes, and 6-year-olds riding bikes better than I may ever ride a bike. And on the other end of the spectrum, I saw guys in their 60s who are out there, once again, riding a bike probably better than I ever will. And then I got out there, and within the course of 2 days, all of a sudden, I was riding stuff confidently that I didn't think I'd ever even try. And just having that experience, and just the excitement and feeling that I was pushing myself and getting something out of it, and seeing the progression, it absolutely blew me away.
And how did you happen to go there when you were visiting back there? How did you,
I went there specifically to go there. I read about it in a magazine, and I was like, gotta do this. Absolutely have to. And being from the East Coast, for my birthday, I'm like, well, I'll just get all my friends from around the country, and we'll all converge on Cleveland in this goofy warehouse. And so we had I guess we had 10 of us there, and came from all across the country, and we all left, and it was just, and since then I've been going back annually.
So it was a fun time was had by all.
Fun time was had by all, and if you're from Cleveland, this might show that I don't know Cleveland, but outside of that facility, we didn't find anything fun to do, but we were fine with it. We just stayed there the entire time.
So who is your target market then? You mentioned little kids to 60-year-olds. It's a broad spectrum.
Yeah, the target market is people who like to have fun on their bikes, period. We get people who are road bikers who've always wanted to try mountain biking, and this gives them an opportunity to try it. You're not driving a 3-hour round trip to get on a trail where you might have a bad experience. You've got a situation where it's a controlled environment, so you can bite off little pieces and try it, and get comfortable with the machine and with the terrain. And so from that level of experience to little kids learning how to ride their bikes, and we get tons of kids on Striders, the pedalless bikes, which are fantastic, by the way. If your kid has training wheels, that's just something that I think society is doing because they hate kids. I think training wheels are really, really tough. But you get the Strider kids, and then we do ladies' nights, and we do newbie night, and so we really offer a wide range of programs to be able to let people, pretty much kids of all ages, to go and play.
Yeah, and yeah, you say kids of all ages. I've found that bicycling does sometimes make you you just kind of go back to your little 12-year-old self.
Releases my inner child every time I do it.
Your responsibilities are gone for a few minutes, and it's just a mini vacation. And especially if you get some adrenaline. I think sometimes road riding, at least I ride more calmly and slowly, that I don't get that adrenaline type surge, and only on a mountain bike really, and really working hard like you might do there.
Well, that and even on a road ride, you get into the ride and you get into that moment, and even if you're not going fast, it's still, you're outside and the wind's going through your hair, and you're touching because you got this tactile connection. You can smell, you can hear, you're breathing the air, and it's not a time when I'm worried about, oh crap, my taxes, I gotta start those. Those are like next week.
Thanks a lot. You're right. So you mentioned some of the specifics that you have some different well, categories to help people come in. So let's talk about some of your activities, your focused activity. You've got stuff for kids, and we didn't really talk about this, and you mentioned the striders. Talk to us about the striders, because some of us don't know too much about those, and we're getting our grandkids the bikes with the training wheels, but striders are the way to go.
They really are, and I'll use my kids as an example. Claire, who's now 8, I had her on training wheels. I didn't know there were other options out there. And she was almost 7, still on training wheels. And my son, I guess she was a little bit younger than that, but my son, we'd found out about him, and before he was 2, we had him on a Strider bike. And at the age of the 2, he could coast down hills, and before he was 3, he was riding a bicycle. And as soon as my daughter saw this, she wanted the training wheels off. We took the pedals off, and it took her about a week to figure it out. But you learn the balance, which is great, and the kid learns it because they're starting off, they're walking the bike, they're trying to figure it out, and then they're running with the bike, and then they're striding with the bike, and then after a while they're picking their feet up, and they get the balance. The pedal part's easy. Kids learn that on a big wheel. So, whereas when and you see kids, they've got training wheels, and you see them riding, and they don't ride like they're learning the balance. They're doing this.
Exactly.
And then they're doing this. And then in this case with my daughter, she found out very quickly the hard way that if you take a hard right turn, then you just pitch right over the handlebars. And you know, tested her helmet, as Officer McDonald said, it's very important to always wear your helmet. But you know, it's a tool that, in my experience, really it just doesn't work.
So you can have striders there.
Yes.
And you're in a safe environment learning, because there's not a bike fair or a bike rodeo every day of the week. So here's
we've had 0 collisions with vehicles so far, so we're doing well.
That's good to know. From the air or from the ground. Okay, good. So tell us about you know, you bring your child in, and what have you got going on for them?
So we got a few things for kids, and one of the things we really like is for the stay-at-home parent with a kid who is 6 or under. Until noon, those kids get to ride for a very low fee. I don't think I'm allowed to mention pricing. And so pretty much during the day, Monday through Friday, the park's very slow, and so it ends up being the parents can be out there, they can be with their kid, get comfortable, and you'll see those kids after 3 or 4 days, and they're kind of ruling the whole place, which is really neat. And then we've got after-school programming, and so the kids can come in after school. We've got different age groups and ability levels for 5 days a week. And then additionally, during the breaks and summer camps coming up, we also offer camps. And it's a 5-day camp. Drop the kids off at 9. You pick them back up at 3:30. Focus on riding, but we do a lot of other stuff. We play with video cameras, and we play with, you know, different games, but you know, focus definitely on riding itself.
And skill, being able to ride the bike, is really critical to being safe.
Yes.
Not just knowing the rules of the road and the law, but being skilled on the bike.
Being skilled in the bike, you know, the confidence that you have, the bike handling skill that you have, and then a big one is the situational awareness and judgment. And those are the 4 pieces that we really push, because we want you to be in an environment where you can start honing your skills, making sure you're kind of aware of what's going around, also making sure that you're a good judge of what you can do and what you want to play with. And then you can take those, and whether you're a road rider or a mountain biker, you've got tracks that you have to cross over. I mean, there's a pothole or 2 that I've seen. I don't know if you run those in your ride. Curbs you've got to contend with. Being able to always make sure you're not only holding your bike in lane on a nice straight line, but you've got that situational awareness. You know what's going on. You understand there's a car behind you. So all these things play together. A bicycle skill set, I mean, bike skills are bike skills.
Yeah. Okay. And kind of along with that, we've had on previous shows, so spin classes at a gym are good to help you be able to, maybe not skills, but the endurance and so forth on a road bike.
Right.
Things that we might do at the lumber yard would help us, maybe mountain biking or road riding. How would that come into play?
Yeah, where spin classes, it's aerobic. You're out there and you're going it for a certain length of time. And in our environment, you're definitely working on skills, but you're also, it's anaerobic, because it's a whole body workout. As you're learning to handle your bike, and you're pumping your bike, and you're moving your weight around your bike, you're using your whole body from your ankles all the way up to your shoulders. And it's pretty impressive. We've got 7 feet of vertical that we're using. So it's kind of hard to say mountain biking when you're talking about 7 feet. But with that minimum amount of elevation, I can provide you an environment where you can work up a sweat very quickly.
I'm sure. Now, being a woman, tell me about your women's class. What if I come in, kind of walk me through how you'd help me?
Absolutely, yeah. We've got on Monday nights, it's ladies' night. And we do a lot of reductions at the front door and making sure you can get the rental equipment very affordably. And then additionally, we have a coach that's out on the floor giving hints, tips, tricks, helping everybody out. But if it's your first time, we'll walk you through. This is the gear that, helmets required. We really like to see people wear elbow pads, knee pads, and gloves, and we have those for rent. Making sure you have the proper shoes. If you showed up in pumps, I'd say, it's probably not the right shoe. But, a good rubber-soled tennis shoe was great. And then kind of walk you through how the place is laid out. It's all color-coded. And so we've got green, which is beginner, blue is intermediate, and then the black is expert. So we're taking a lot from the ski industry. And then walking through, this is how the park is laid out. Everything's directional. There are little sharrows on the ground which show you how the whole place is run. And then from there, we'll hand you over to the coach.
So you don't have to go from 0 to 60. I mean, I guess that's what I would be afraid of, is coming in the door and, here, get on this track, and oh.
No, absolutely not. I mean, you start from totally flat concrete around the outside with nothing on it, where you can get used to this bike, because it's a different beast than what you're going to be used to. The equipment is pretty minimal. The seat's lower. You've got only one brake for the park bikes. We really want to take the equipment out of the equation, if you will, and really work on you and work on your skill set. And these skills will transfer, but making sure you have that ability to be able to do all this stuff.
So if I come, what should I bring, and what are you going to provide, for a fee, of course, but what do I bring, what do I come with, and what do you have for me there?
So, awesome attitude, a smile, it's great, and then comfortable clothes. I mean, it's a physical activity, so wear appropriate. You're going to want, it might be a little bit chilly at first in the wintertime. You'll find that it doesn't stay cold for very long.
I bet not.
It's in the 60s in the wintertime. And so you probably want to layer a little bit, so you can start off and have a little bit of a jacket and then be able to take that off. A t-shirt's fine. Whether you have pants that don't restrict your movement or you're wearing shorts is great. And then if you've got shoes or pads, fantastic. If not, we can help you out with that stuff.
Okay. And a helmet?
Bring your helmet.
Bring your helmet.
We have helmets as well.
Helmets. Okay. And maybe gloves, but not necessarily.
I'm a big believer in gloves,
okay.
personally. So I would highly, we don't require it. I highly recommend it. I won't ride my bike without gloves, just because if something happens and you put a hand down,
So you have the bikes there, or should I bring my bike?
We've got a ton of bikes there.
Okay.
And feel free to bring your bike if you have an appropriate bike. If you showed up in a recumbent, once again, we tell you to put that with your pumps and say no. But we have over 60 bikes. Bring your bike, but chances are our bikes will probably be more suitable, and we'll talk about it and figure out how that bike fits into it, or if not, we'll set you up with a nice bike.
Okay. Okay. Now, what are the protocol or the rules at the lumber yard?
The good attitude is the big one, and a lot of it is just understanding how the place works. The fact that it's broken down into skill-appropriate areas: beginner, intermediate, advanced. You've got those arrows. You're always kind of following the arrows, and just making sure that you're aware that we don't have problems with the older kids, but with the younger kids, they'll do what we call hot lapping, and they'll finish doing the track and immediately roll back and do it again. And then the older kids, you sit there and you're waiting, and you want them to get further enough along that you can drop in, and the next kid drops in, and then they have this merry-go-round, and you can't feed into that. And so we have ambassadors out on the floor who work with the kids and work with everybody and let them know, everybody gets a turn. Make sure there's a lot of room. There's an appropriate amount of room between you and the person in front of you. We compare it to skiing. If you're on a ski slope, you can follow the person in front of you as closely as you want to. But if they're really slow and you're really fast, you're going to impact your experience, right? So after a while, you get to quickly learn to judge, like, okay, that he's pretty good, so I can go right behind him and I'll be fine. Or this little kid's brand new, so I'll let him get halfway through the track and then I'll drop in.
Okay. So there's just a little bit of a learning curve there, but you have people to help you with that. And just some good observation will bring you up to speed pretty quick, it sounds like.
And there's signage around the park as well, talking about the bicycle etiquette. Little directional arrows showing you how to get to the different parts of the park. so we do a lot to make sure that we're trying to ensure in every way we can that you have an awesome experience.
So just kind of wrapping up here, you were at the Pedal Nations Bike Show where we
Yes.
met. And what did you do there, and what was the response of the people coming to the show?
The big thing we were doing there was just getting out the word and letting them know that not only do we have a bike park, but this is what the bike park is. So a lot of the stuff we've discussed in terms of it's not just for the crazy adrenaline junkies
Yeah.
looking to get big air. It's really not. It's anyone who's looking to have a good time, be able to, increase their skills. And then we also were responsible for building all the jumps for the professional riders and had a fun time doing that. And then you got to see the kids on the absolute upper end of the scale.
Yes, yes. Now, so you don't have anything quite that elaborate at the lumber yard?
Not at this point, but we're in phase 1 of multi-phases. So already in the plans and already approved is to build an additional building which will be much taller and allow for the bigger jumps and for the foam pit and the airbag, the tools that you can use to figure out how to do some of the bigger stuff.
Because some of this leads to competition for some of these people.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've got 4 professional riders on staff that compete around the world, and they work during the wintertime, and then the summertime they'll be off competing.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Will, at the lumber yard, and I hope you'll go out there and try it. That you really did a good job of describing it, and it sounds like a lot of fun. Thank you.
And thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us, and I hope you'll come out and ride with us soon. Be safe and sign up for Beaverton Banks and Beyond Bicycle Tour on August 24th. And join Bruce and I for bike rides. Thank you.